6.3 square root functions. My worksheet is a little bit different than your worksheet, so I'm going to change the numbers here. This equation on your page, I believe, says y equals 2 plus square root of x plus 3. So I apologize about that. But we're going to graph these square root functions. And so the first thing I want you to do is I want you to just memorize that a square root function looks like an eyebrow. It's got a special pattern, and we're going to memorize that special pattern as 1, 3, 5. But before we get there, let's understand where that comes from. We're talking about square roots, and so look at the ones that we know. We know square root of 0 equals 0, and square root of 1 equals 1, and square root of 4 equals 2, and square root of 9 equals 3, square root of 16 equals 4, and so on and so on and so on. But those are the first few that we know. There are other ones. We could have weird ones that come out to be decimals. You can't have negatives, though. So really the first one we can think about, talk about as far as real numbers go, is square root of 0. All right, so if I want to graph it, I have to do something with these square roots, and I have to graph this thing that I call an eyebrow shape, but it's nice if you know this point. This is called the vertex. So we want the vertex, and then we're going to use that 1, 3, 5 pattern. That's pretty much it. Once you know what you're doing, this is going to go really, really fast. So, where the 1, 3, 5 pattern comes from. If you look at the first number we know, square root of 0, and then you go to the next number that we know, that's an increase of 1. If you go to the next one we know, that's an increase of 3, from 1 to 4. From 4 to 9 is an increase of 5. And from 9 to 16 is an increase of 7. We definitely see a pattern. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, keep going, keep going, keep going. But this pattern from one square root that we know to the next is going to be a huge shortcut for graphing these functions. What you could do is you could make a table to graph them. And I know some other teachers might make you do that. And you might pick some numbers. But the problem is this is really inefficient. It's going to take you kind of a long time, and you still might mess it up. If you learn the vertex 1, 3, 5 method, you're going to be able to graph these really, really quickly. Here's how it works. Finding the vertex is basically finding this first point. And I'm finding this first point where the square root is equal to 0. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this square root and look for the number that makes this part equal 0. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort to figure out that x would equal negative 3. When x equals negative 3, then that square root is 0. And so we're going to have a point that's negative 3, comma, whatever you get when you plug in negative 3. But if you plug in negative 3, that makes this 0. That's kind of the whole point. And if that's 0, it falls out. You're left with just y equals 2. That's the vertex. So we're going to graph that point, negative 3, 2. So 3 left, 2 up. And that's the vertex. That's this point on my eyebrow. Now we're going to utilize that pattern. So the pattern says we're going to increase by 1, increase by 3, increase by 5. It's going to look like that. It might remind you of a parabola, and it is the same pattern. It's just the pattern goes sideways instead of up and down. So what I'll do is I'll go over 1 and up 1. Over 3 and up 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and up 1. If I had room, I'd go over 7, over 9, over 11. But since I'm not over room, I'll just draw. And that's it. And one thing I don't want you to do not go past that dot. There's nothing past that dot because there's nothing to the left of 0. That 0 is the first point. Make sure that vertex is your first point. So what I'm looking for here and what I want to see this vertex, and I want to see that you utilize the 1, 3, 5 pattern on the graph. If you look at number 2, your problem for number 2 says this. And so I'm going to do the same thing. I look at the square root and look for the number that makes this part equal 0. Well, don't think too hard, it's just 0. Square root of 0. Square root of 0 is 0, that's going to cancel out. I'm just going to leave me with that negative 2. Y equals negative 2. And so the vertex is this point, 0, negative 2. Now I'm going to use my 1, 3, 5 pattern. I'm going to go over 1, over 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Takes me off the page, whatever. That's okay. Eyebrow shape. Let's look at number 8. Number 8 says y equals square root of x minus 3. And so again, we're going to find the vertex. We look for what number makes this equal 0. Well, that's just 3. If that's 0, all that falls out. Square root of 0 is 0. Y equals 0. And so your vertex is this point 3, 0 right there. Right 3, up 0. Over 1, over 3, out of room, draw your eyebrow. One more, let's go back and look at number 6. Number 6 says y equals negative 1 plus square root x minus 3. So the exact same thing. We're looking for what makes the square root of 0, and that's going to be the number 3. So your vertex is going to be a 3, comma, that drops off, and you're left with negative 1. That's your vertex, 3, comma, negative 1. 3, negative 1. 1, 3, 5 pattern, over 1, over 3. Now there are some different things that could possibly happen. If there was a number, like a number right there, it would change your pattern slightly. But for now, we're doing very basic, get your feet wet type problems, and that's that.